Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to Tutorials by Sagui R. Today we're going to be looking at family law, right? That is PVL2601, the second year module. We are going to start at section 1, marriage law, right? Let's have a look at what your study guide wants the outcome to be from here, okay? It goes straight to study unit 1, the legal requirements of or for a civil marriage, right? Where the road map was gonna show us marriage law, the legal requirements for a civil marriage, voidable and putative civil marriage, the invariable consequences of civil marriages, marital property dissolution of a civil marriage, civil unions, customary marriages, Muslim and Hindi marriages, life partners, the responsibilities and rights of parents and children, right? Okay, right? This module has got a prescribed textbook which is mentioned in your tutorial letter. However, I have summarized as far as possible for you to be able to understand quicker when you read now the prescribed textbook. All right, so now content of the study unit, you should be able to give the traditional definition of a civil marriage as well as the modern version of this definition and set out in page 15 of your prescribed book. Note further that it is undesirable to describe a civil marriages Note further that it is undesirable to describe a civil marriage as a type of contract. Let's get right into let's get right into the video, right into the news. What is civil marriage? So we're gonna take it all the way back to the engagement. Just 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Let us continue. Okay, now your prescribed textbook is gonna start exactly at the engagement. So I have done notes to make things simpler so that when you go through your prescribed textbook, you are not lost. All right. Okay, so an engagement is defined as a contract between a man and a woman to marry each other on a specific time or date. All right, that's what an engagement is. An engagement is not like a normal contract, obviously, because like it's just, you know, it's the first steps, but it's not like something you can take somebody to court for and say, but you said you promised to marry me. No, it doesn't apply in South Africa. So it's not a prerequisite for a conclusion of a valid marriage. Okay, the engagement is concluded by means of offer and acceptance. When they say, will you marry me, you know, contracts can be concluded by post the moment the person who made the offer becomes aware of its acceptance. The parties do not have to be in each other's presence. Thus, an engagement can be concluded by a representative on behalf of the parties with their consent. No special formalities for the conclusion of an engagement, right? Only persons who are competent validly to marry one another can enter into a contract of engagement. In certain circumstances and based on good reasons, an engagement can be terminated unilaterally, which means one person can decide, no, I no longer want to do this anymore. Okay. Right, so what are the requirements for a valid engagement? Consent, capacity to act, engagement must be lawful, possibility of performance. Let us now break down this requirements. 1, we speak of contents. A material mistake renders an engagement invalid. A misrepresentation renders an engagement voidable at the instance of the party that is misled. It does not matter whether the misrepresentation was made innocently or fraudulently. Misrepresentation is not only committed by positive false representations, but also through failure to correct an existing misconception or an omission to disclose certain facts where there is a duty to speak. Laugh scammers, misrepresentation, right? In your textbook, it will go further to explain misrepresentation, but I now wanted to give you a glimpse of what really is going on when it comes to misrepresentation. Okay, now the requirements, I'm gonna jump quickly from here because it's like I'm gonna read the same thing over and over again for you guys. So let's go to in your study guide, you are going to get engagement as the first topic to read. So you're gonna read through it, and then I'm gonna skip it a bit and go straight to the conclusion of, which is what starts in your study guide, because that's what they're gonna ask you on. The engagement one is just something that is, by the way, it's part of the package, but they don't ask you too much about it. That's what I know. That's why in here it's not, in the study guide it's not there. So we're going to look at the requirements for a civil marriage, right? In your study guide, it says that the parties must have capacity to act. It means this person must be of age, must be able to reason for themselves, that is 18 and above. There must be an agreement between the parties to enter into a civil marriage with each other. There must be consensus. The marriage between the parties must be lawful. The prescribed formalities must be complied with. So when they say the prescribed formalities to conclude a civil marriage, they mean the order, you know, the formalities of you guys are going to now end up with maybe you're gonna do it at your wedding, have an officer there who will sign you guys through, or you go to court where you submit you submit your IDs, do fingerprints and all those things. The formalities are compiled with. Then they will issue you with your marriage certificate after you have complied with the requirements. Now we take a look at now let me define. Marriage is a legally recognized long-life voluntary union between one man and one woman to the exclusion of all other persons. Shamini shawena, it's only us together. It's giving Dineum Loisani and Pressman. It's giving Nkarin Kaema. This is what a civil marriage is. It's between two people. 1, 2. It's not polygamy. Okay. The definition relates only to civil marriages, since Muslim and customary marriages permit husbands to take more than one wife. Because when you're a lawyer, obviously you're gonna want this one of me and you together. Okay. Although marriage may look like a contract, it's not a contract. So when you define marriage, do not ever in your definition, if you're gonna have to define in your assignments, your exam, you're gonna have to define, do not mention the contract part. Leave it. Okay. So requirements for a valid marriage: capacity to act, consensus, which is agreement. Marriage must be lawful. Formalities must be compiled with. This means let's now tackle these requirements. Capacity to act. Some persons are totally incapable of marrying because they have no capacity to act. For example, an infant or mentally ill person. An infant, it's infant, but it's a child, it's a small baby, it's somebody under. So when you hear infants in your question papers, INFANS, that is somebody below, from the age of 7 going down. They have no capacity to act. A person who's mentally unwell, they can't act. Certain people may marry, but only with the consent of other persons. The most important example is minor children. A girl under 12 and a boy under 14 are absolutely incompetent to marry. Under capacity to act, we have declared prodigals. I hope I said it right. A prodigal is a person with mental ability but who is not capable of managing his or her own affairs because he squanders his assets in an irresponsible and reckless way. Declared prodigal is completely invalid. Insane persons. An insane person is a person with a mental disorder or disability who cannot understand the nature and the consequences of his act due to his disorder. Therefore, such people, they don't have capacity to act. Persons under curatorship because they are incapable of managing their own affairs. Such persons are not insane, but simply incapable of looking after their own affairs due to a disability or chronic illness. They are competent to conclude a marriage without the consent of their curator. Do you hear? These ones, those who are under curatorship, you heard what I said, right? They can marry. Okay. Now, the second requirement to successfully conclude a marriage agreement, consensus. The parties must be in agreement that they want to marry each other. Sometimes no genuine consensus exists, or consensus is defective. The factors having an effect on consensus are mistake, misrepresentation, duress, and undue influence. So under consensus, this was what could go wrong, and if this go wrong, you cannot conclude a valid marriage agreement. Mistake, unclear on effect of validity. Only a material mistake excludes agreement. Error in persona concerning the ID of the other party, an error in negotiation concerning the nature of the act are the only forms of material mistakes in respect of marriage. It is unclear whether a material mistake renders the marriage void or voidable. Shalo says the marriage is voidable. Courage says it's void but should be voidable. Distinguish stimulated marriages from material mistake. A stimulated marriage is a marriage of convenience. Okay. Right, let's move on to the next part. Of what could go wrong with consensus. Misrepresentation. If there's any misrepresentation while trying to conclude a civil marriage, that marriage is void. Let me explain why. One party misleads the other prior to the marriage by making untruthful statements or giving false impression to the other, and thereby persuades the other to enter into the marriage. Only a serious misrepresentation affects the validity of a marriage. Love scam. See, love scam. You see what's going on with people scamming people money? This is a misrepresentation, and any marriage they enter in with that other person is voidable. An example of a serious misrepresentation: woman already pregnant by another man at the time of marriage and concealing it, or impotence or sterility. The effect of material misrepresentation has on the validity of a marriage is that it can be annulled or set aside. When you put jacket for the baby on the wrong father. All right, the third one, under what could go wrong if consensus, like the mistakes that could happen under consensus, is duress. It makes the marriage voidable. Force, undue pressure. Here, one of the parties has been forced to consent to the marriage. This marriage will be voidable. In the case Smith versus Smith, the bride, so threatened by parents and assaulted and future husband, she went through a ceremony in days. The marriage was set aside. This is a case law. Case law is very important. Number 4, undue influence. voidable, where one of the parties to the marriage has been influenced in his or her choice and has been persuaded to enter into the marriage due to the influence. You women who are always saying, when are you gonna marry me? One day you will claim undue influence. Now, the third requirement is marriage must be lawful. Unlawful marriage is void. I'm going to explain to you what does voidable and void, what's the difference, right? An unlawful marriage is void. There are 6 groups of people who cannot marry. People who are already married, people who are already married, adoptive parent and adopted child, prohibited degrees of relationship, guardian and ward, prohibition on... Okay, this one has changed, so it doesn't matter. So let's leave the 6 groups and put people who are already married, adoptive parents and adopted child, guardian and ward. People who are married, already married, a person who's already married cannot enter into a civil marriage with another person. It's not gonna happen. I mean, come on. Like, yeah, it's simple. Okay, let's move on to the 4th requirement for a valid marriage. Formalities must be complied with. The marriage must comply with certain formalities. Certain formalities must be observed during the wedding ceremony. Both parties must be personally present. Section 29, subsection 2 of the Marriage Act states that a marriage shall be this word, SOLMNISE. I think it's solemnized in a church, or rather, let's say concluded in a church or other building which is used for religious services, or in a public office or private dwelling house with open doors and in the presence of the parties themselves and at least 2 competent witnesses. We are going to leave it at that. I am going to continue with this chapter in the next video. I will make it longer to cover the whole chapter. I love you so much. I will see you in the next episode. Mwah!